You couldn't play 5 black players because they were undisciplined. You couldn't play 5 black players because they didn't follow orders. You couldn't play 5 black players because they would just choke when the going got tough.
Every athlete's dream is to get to a playoff, not alone think about making it to the Final Four.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about. Hey man, you realize what y'all did? Yeah, we won. He said, no man, think about it now. Black against white. I said, you know, I don't even think about it till he brought it up. I mean, they talked a little in the paper, but to me it's just a game, but ended up not being just a game.
Well, that was probably one of the most exciting games a broadcaster ever did because it was so spectacular and so unusual. What's that little old black school down in Texas was the attitude I heard a lot. But I think it opened eyes and paved the way for possible changes in attitude.
This was the perfect place, the perfect environment for the incubation of the whole championship team and the significance later in years.
My grandfather was watching this game and he called my parents after the game because he lived in East Texas, and he asked if my parents were sending me to an all-black school.
Well, you know, we were much smaller then, and all the athletic programs were a part of. They were the center of a lot of the entertainment, and everybody had tickets to the games.
Well, the atmosphere was wonderful. There was such an air of excitement.
This is a campus that, if you look at the previous year, 1965, the editor of the flow sheet was a guy named Nelson Sanders, who was black. Aside from that, we were a very special community.
Texas was not one of the places that I ever had a chance to go. So, you know, of course, you know, the oil wells and looking for the cowboys and all that stuff was my first impression. And when landing here in El Paso, I saw all the beautiful mountains and everything. And of course, landing out on an airfield where you had to walk into the airport, it was somewhat strange to me, but I felt pretty comfortable because the people right from the beginning were really friendly to me.
They said El Paso, I thought they'd still be running around with, you know, horses and cows. I was shocked when it was a city. I knew not a thing about Texas Western.
When I first got here, it was like nothing but desert, you know, and just the mountains and stuff, you know, and I had to adjust like everybody else, I guess, you know.
El Paso was huge compared to our cattle farm.
I left Detroit, it was about, I had 10 degrees when I got here, it was 70. This was in January. I didn't know what I was coming in for at all.
My initial impressions of this school and of the city was one of warmth, because I was treated real well here.
Slow pace, lovely people. New York City, we don't speak often to anyone, but in El Paso, I walked 3 steps. Howdy, how you doing?
It was a very friendly town. Everybody that lived here was friendly. The staff was friendly at the university, and they had a great basketball program.
I love the college. It was all in one area, and it was a beautiful campus.
It was different, you know. It was you know, from the architecture, you know, and you know the way the landscape was. It was quite odd, you know, versus the big city, you know, campus atmosphere.
There was no culture shock. It's the same all over. Believe me, just black, white, Mexican, you know, Chinese.
And I think from the moment I stepped off the plane and saw El Paso, saw the mountains, came and visited, met some of the players, met with Coach Haskins and Coach Iba, I knew that this is where I wanted to end up.
I played basketball at Austin High School, and I had two wonderful coaches that were, you know, like any parent would like a coach to be, is counsel their kids, you know, and I had an academic scholarship. I knew I was going to go to college, and Texas Western just happened to be in El Paso.
Well, I was going to junior college in Iowa. In those days, in the 60s, you only had to go 1 year. And Coach Haskins saw me at a junior college, national junior college tournament.
I first met Coach Haskins. I was on my way home for lunch one day, and he drove past me in a car, and he followed me all the way home. My mother just fell in love with him. And my mother is the one who was instrumental in me getting here. She's the one who said that this is where you're going to go to school. This is where I want you to go, because I think that he's a fine gentleman and that he'll help you grow.
And I remember a representative from one of the banks came to New York City, and I had a chance to talk to him. And I attended for 1 year North Carolina A&T, and I left there and did not want to really get into the food business of working in a fast food place in New York City, and wanting desperately to go back to school. So after talking to him, I did not hesitate to take that first decision and come into El Paso, and as you see, it was the best move I ever made in my life.
No, I was recruited by Willie Brown, and one of the vice presidents of the bank came down to watch me play, and a few others. And he saw, you know, that I had game, I guess. So
I grew up in Albuquerque. First person in my family to attend college. I think probably, this is silly, but my father was stationed in Enid, Oklahoma for a while in World War II, flying bombers, and it turned out that that's where Coach Haskins was from. And I think it made the dialogue between he and my parents rather comfortable. The school had just become a liberal arts school from the Texas School of Mines, and my father was interested in my becoming an engineer, and it was a good choice. We liked Coach Haskins, we liked his approach to basketball, and I came.
The way I got here was kind of funny. Dr. Joe Ray, the president of the university, I guess it's the only time I've been interviewed, and he looked at me, and I guess I weighed about 210 or 220, and I was going to live in the old miners' hall, the dormitory, the athletic dorm. And the only thing he was concerned, he never asked me if I could coach. He said, "Can you run that damn dorm?"
You big girl, you know, tell him, Mo, go put a skirt on him.
He was kind of like Jekyll and Hyde.
he was a tough guy, and Coach Haskins and I were on the same page, because I felt that I was a tough guy too.
I played AAU basketball for 3 years with the Artesia Travelers, who were in the National Industrial Basketball League. And all of a sudden I realized that I didn't want to play much longer, and didn't know what to do, and I went to a coaching clinic in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and decided that, well, I didn't know anything else, maybe I ought to try coaching. And my wife, Mary, that was the only thing she ever told me, that she was wanting me to coach. At that time we only had one child, and we took off for Benjamin, coached girls basketball, boys basketball. I was the coach. I was the only coach. That was my first job. That's how I got introduced to coaching. Next year, I made a real good switch. Went to Headley, Texas, town of 500. I liked that because we didn't have football, and get to practice. But I was still driving the school bus, and I was at Headley 4 years, and then went to the metropolis of Dumas, which is about 12,000 for 1 year, and then George McCarty, the guy that was trying to hire me as an assistant, by then was Dean of Men at Texas Western. I took a pay cut coming from Dumas, but I loved it. Having the opportunity to be a college coach is something that a lot of guys have to wait a lot longer than I did. And the only reason I got that opportunity was George McCarty, so I owe a lot to him.
He was the bear. I mean, he was loud, and he was, one thing, he always had the reputation of getting after the referees. So as students, that's all we needed, was someone to help us get, agitate the referees even more. So the way he moved, the way he yelled, the way he talked, just made us, go up one step higher in terms of wanting to agitate the referees.
I had met Coach Haskins a few times when we were playing ball in high school, and he was always at the high school ball games looking for talent and promoting basketball in El Paso, and even a man with his busy college schedule had time to do that, and I kind of respected that.
First time I met Coach Haskins and Coach Iber, they met us at the airport. It was Willie Cage and I. And this nice little punchy young gentleman, met us at the airport, and we shook hands, and, he told us he was glad to have us here in El Paso, and looking forward to, watching us play basketball. I had the red shirt my first year, and he was, he told, he was great, easy talking guy, Coach Iber didn't say much. It was Coach Haskins that was doing the talking. And I said to Willie Cage, I said, Willie, man, I like this coach.
After practice, yes, but during practice, it was a little bit different. He wasn't so nice doing practices. He would yell, he would scream, he would get on you.
Had his ways of motivating people.
He wouldn't care if you're yellow, pink, purple, it doesn't matter. He just hates everybody at practice no matter what. It was super hard, I would put it that way.
I think we practiced until Coach Haskins got tired.
If I had to do over, we'd practice a little harder.
Unbelievable.
When you play for the man, you have a slightly different feeling for him, but once you've graduated, you come to appreciate more and more what he does with the talent he has and how he's able to get the most out of that talent.
Well, he was tough on a few guys. He wasn't tough on me because I knew, what I was doing.
For some reason, I became Coach Haskins' whooping dog. He had quite a few lovely names for me. Never cursed at me, nor did he kill my spirit.
And he didn't like Haskins, he'd talk about your mother, you, everybody else.
Say, you wild man. And
because when we played, you got one drink of water, and that was in between half.
He said, Neville Shep, sometimes if your brains was dynamite, you just blow this gym up. The guys would kind of sniggle, and I'd kind of...
Well, I thought he was kind of tough.
I got used to it.
And I just grit my mouth, never would look him in the face, or nor show the traces of anger or some of the nice words I was trying to say to him. Boop.
He got his point across.
But he had told us prior to practices, prior to us even signing, that he was the kind of a guy that would ride you, and if he rode you, that meant that he thought that you could help him.
Far none, our practices were harder than any game. We were going to the games, playing the games was no comparison.
The practice was tough, very difficult, but I like being difficult, and certainly nothing good ever happened from not having good preparation. So we were preparing to be a good team.
It was the standard, the running, doing a couple of layup drills. Then we went to this four-corner defense, and that defense was...
But defense wins you ball games.
He demanded, I think, and expected a lot from you.
What he was really doing is giving me the gut check. And he had this thing, I said, I'm gonna show you. And myself, along with other players, when he went through these little antics, it made us play harder. But just playing, you know, he had something new for us. You know, he's a smart, he knew his athletes. The next day was a new day. He never brought anything from the previous practice into the gym the next day. And so, you know, I felt comfortable with the fact that, hey, I'm coming in here. I don't want to hear that fat man yelling at me anymore. You know, so I'm going to get out here and break my little...
At week's end, we were very anxious to have a game. It was the lightest night of the week. We played very simple basketball. We didn't play zone defenses. We didn't switch on defense. We played a straight up man-to-man. Our offense was very simple, and we could understand it. And if we did it well enough, that's how it worked. And he told us if we could become proficient at those few things, we would win.
Oh, I was always nervous, not about the other team, I was always nervous about mine.
And he sat us down after this one day of practice, and he started walking up and down and said, I just can't believe you all. Far enough, I don't think you all will win a game the whole darn season. You know, you're the worst I ever seen. That was the famous word. You're the worst I ever seen, far none. And you know, tired, and I kind of looked down at the rest of it, and we looked kind of scrawny, you know. I said, man, it's gonna be a hard season.
I remember calling my dad before we'd even played my first game back in Kansas and telling him we had a special team, and I felt that we really had a chance to do well.
I knew we were going to have a good team because the year before, the people we had on our freshman team were beating our varsity consistently.
I didn't know how far we would go, but I knew we had a special team.
I always thought we were going to be real good. The secret is, you know, you never know until you play against the supposedly big teams.
We weren't even ranked at the beginning of the season. We knew what we had as far as, you know, with Latin and Willie Verzi and myself, you know.
We knew that we had a good team. How far we were going to go, you never know that.
We had Bobby Joe Hill and Neville Shedd, and hey, Harry Floyd just put the pieces together, and that was that.
We thought we were very good.
We had a team that every athlete, the personalities were all, you know, they were all different. You know, we all sang a different song. And when you put that melody together, you know, it came out with a sound that was just, you know, courageous, that I guess it's, you know, the shot came around the world.
I knew we had good talent. I knew we were quick, and we played well as a team together at the times I could get them to play.
This group sometimes had a hard time staying focused in ball games, and they would get behind, and then they would play to their ability to come back and win ball games.
We were always relaxed.
We played cards all the time, you know, spade.
Well, they were very difficult to motivate.
Because we had a quiet confidence about us. Most of the guys from big cities, they weren't going to be intimidated by anybody.
You need a great team to be a great team, but you also need one or two players that really stand out.
As time went on, Bobby Joe Hill got better every ball game. And of course Latin became a force with Harry and Orston.
Bobby Joe and I had a great relationship. The cohesiveness is just very difficult to explain that we had together. We had a great understanding.
Bobby Joe Hill is as good a leader as there's ever been in basketball when you get him turned on.
You need a dominant player inside, you need a dominant player outside. Certainly we were, along with our teammates, that one of the things that really made us very good.
So it was a situation where our basketball team started the year very good, but we improved as each game went along.
I felt very comfortable as a big man because I had David Latin, 6'6", 244 pounds. I had one of the best rebounders, you know, on the other side of me, and I was a pretty good, you know, player myself.
I played all three positions, guard, forward, and center. So wherever I was needed, I can handle the ball. I can, you know, play the post. I can do some moves to get myself open and go score.
We had the ability to mold ourselves to the opponent quickly. And it was Coach Haskins' genius to be able to sit on the bench thinking about who was on that bench, what their skills were, and put them in the ballgame at the right time.
I think we had a team full of leaders, and also the people who were leading were also good followers.
We relied on everybody, you know. We had a strong leader, so, you know, we felt comfortable in going to the games.
The players that came off the bench were the players that fit the puzzle at that time, and it worked. If we couldn't have done that, we wouldn't have won the game at Colorado State on the last second. We wouldn't have beat Kansas. We wouldn't have had the experience with Cincinnati that we had.
The thing that this basketball team had, they had the ability to stop people defensively, and they had the ability to score points.
Well, it didn't matter who you stuck in front of us, we were ready to play.
I remember that year we were playing third-ranked Iowa, and I wasn't sure at that time how good we were, but as the only time I saw that 66 bunch get motivated. We had them 32-4 with about 8 or 9 minutes left in the first half, and then didn't play anymore. Everybody just went and rested.
I felt that we were bulletproof and that we could never lose.
As we went along, a lot of people pointed at us because we hadn't lost a ball game. And anytime you're undefeated, you're going to get their best effort.
Every game was important. Every game that we played. I mean, it wasn't, to be honest with you, it wasn't a lot of fun because every game was important. We couldn't lose.
Good things happen when you keep winning. We knew that if we kept winning, that something good would happen.
The year was a great year, but a year that I almost lost my sanity.
These players made sure that we almost had heart attacks quite often during the season. There were so many times that they came from behind and went into overtime, and in fact even double overtime.
You know, we're always behind. It seemed like we were always in a close game, in games that we didn't need to be, they didn't need to be close.
It's like a great horse race. You know, sometimes great horses, the secretary to race along right together, right in the bunch. And when it's time to win, they just win. When you walk between the lines, it's time to play. Nobody's supposed to be better than you. If you think any other way, you shouldn't play.
I knew that we would go a long ways in the tournament. I didn't know whether we would go all the way or not.
We knew what we had to do. We were very confident in each other.
It was just a matter of time before something had to happen. It was a national championship game. I mean, that was a game that whatever team won it would stand up at the top of the pyramid and look down at all the other teams and say, okay, hey, we've got what you all started out to get at the beginning of the season, and this is fun.
We went along in the tournament, and the teams that looked like we were going to play, it was really even more interesting.
Texas Western beat first Cincinnati and then Kansas in the regional tournament, which were amazing victories.
It wouldn't have been nearly as fascinating had we played Utah for the championship, or if we'd have played UCLA, teams that had already integrated for years. It was interesting that it was Duke and Kentucky.
Everyone else thought that the semifinal game was the real championship game.
The Miners, as an independent, had to participate in a play-in game. So they actually had to win one more game than Kentucky did to get to the finals. Now, to some extent, some people thought Duke was their main rival, of course, but Texas Western was ranked number 3. The Kentucky team had been ranked number 1 in the country for much of the year. The only thing that had been a question mark about them is they were a fairly short team. They were sometimes called runts, because they were short. The fact that they had won using mostly 5 players, they didn't have much depth, and they also won without a tall center, made them really a favorite team for Rupp and a lot of Kentucky fans. There was a lot of sympathy for them because they didn't have the superstars that some of the Kentucky teams had had. There was this tremendous mystique about Kentucky This was a particularly successful Kentucky team, so naturally they were fairly confident about all of their games, not just the ones against Texas Western.
We were such a stepchild that we weren't supposed to be on the same floor with them.
They were saying that Pat Riley and Louis Dampy was better than anything or anyone on our team.
It was just very difficult for basketball fans to think that this obscure school with this unknown young coach who'd been a high school coach and a bus driver could possibly beat Kentucky. After all, they had as their coach Adolph Rupp, who had won 4 NCAA championships and was arguably the most successful college coach in the United States at the time. Adolph Rupp was the coach at Kentucky and had been the coach at Kentucky since the 1930s. Some people would argue he was the most influential person in the state of Kentucky, even more influential than the governor.
I could have cared less about him. You know, it sounded rude and blunt to the point.
Rupp was an elderly coach by the standards of the day. He'd coached, with white players all of his life. He, for whatever reason, began to acquire a reputation of not being interested in breaking the color line.
That's what he was taught, so that's really all he knew.
I was not playing against Coach Rupp. I was playing against Kentucky. I went into the game on an up note, and it was a personal reason because that particular game I started.
This game matches not only a team that has 5 black starters,
and Kentucky's team was all white, and Adolph Rupp made the statement to his players that no team of 5 blacks can beat us.
I certainly thought that statement was ridiculous and a little bit uncalled for, but he said it.
I mean, we started 5 blacks anyway. Nobody understood that.
First of all, we were going to play the 5 best players.
They were trying to make a big deal of black and white, but Armstrong, he's a white guy. If he hadn't played the second half against Utah, we probably wouldn't have won.
Careful observers saw this as a changing of the guard or a turning point in college basketball.
What's going on? What we have here is a problem, but we can relate to the problem, just win the ball game.
We had a chalk talk the afternoon of the game, and I look over and we're in a little hotel room in College Park, Maryland. And I look over and Hill's got a toothpick stuck in his teeth, about half asleep. And I look over and Lattin's, kind of yawning and what have you. And, we're fixing to play for the national championship.
When it got to the big game, we felt pretty comfortable.
That meeting ended up with me throwing an eraser against the wall.
Go out there, play that tenacious style of defense, get on the boards.
And told them I hope they get their, kick.
Play together and play hard, and we were going to be all right.
When you start a ball game, you never know how it's going to go.
The biggest surprise was that we started with 3 guards.
The first play of the game turned the game around. David Last dunked on Pat Riley. First play, that's the one strategy coach said. He said, little one, throw that wet ball to the basket, and David, you just put the wet ball into the basket.
Lattin dominated the early part of that basketball game.
We pretty well dominated, controlled, I'd say, not dominated, but controlled the tempo of the game.
The UTEP players were so much quicker and faster, and they just surprised them, and we just ran away with the game.
Oh, we did once in a while. Bobby Joe stole the ball, and we did this or did that.
Mad defense.
I remember Bobby Joe's 2 steals because that's where it really turned.
We were behind by 1 or something. I took one and made a layup.
The first thing I always think about are the 2 steals by Bobby Joe.
And then took another one, made a layup.
Those 2 steals kept coming back to him.
And that was the only time we was ever behind, and then we were ahead by 3 then. And
those back-to-back steals by Bobby Joe, I think, kind of broke Kentucky's back.
They couldn't get a shot off sometimes.
I like my roommate's dunks, so Daddy D, David Lattin. I think we was dunking, it got their attention.
Dunking is can be an intimidating weapon.
They were about 6'6", 6'7", 250 pounds. When he dunked, it was thunder.
Yeah, he sort of dunked him in the basket.
I did it quite often, matter of fact, during the game.
72-65, the final score.
And it was great.
We went through the motions. I didn't think we played all out that game.
I took the net, I put in my shirt, and I ran to the locker room.
Winning a national championship takes tremendous dedication, tremendous work, ethics, but it also takes luck. And sometimes luck plays a lot in that. And fortunately, it all came together for us.
It was nice that we won. It was good for the town. It was good. It was really good for college basketball.
There are certain things that happen in history that maybe take 20 years to realize what an impact or what a significance it played in the history of our country.
As years have passed, the game did turn basketball around.
As the big crowd files out of Cole Fieldhouse, press row works feverishly to make midnight deadlines. Their stories will tell of a small college in El Paso, Texas.
The town was going nuts that night, I can tell you this, because from here we left in cars and caravans and went all the way around San Jacinto Plaza.
I remember we circled the airport several times because there was thousands of people out on the runway.
And we just kept making the circles till about 1 o'clock in the morning.
When I came back, it was like 4 days later, but the whole place is still going berserk.
There's fires at the center of campus. They had opened up some of the fire hydrants.
It wasn't fun for me. I hope they had a good time. I sure didn't.
People were going all over town in cars, honking their cars downtown. No one, El Paso had never seen anything like it. Can you imagine?
I don't think I have run across a single black sports fan, older black sports fan, or African American professor who doesn't remember that game and doesn't remember the racial symbolism of it.
I remember being on the playground and talking about the importance of the game. I think in the context of the 1960s, the game was invaluable.
The country was still in its infancy of, desegregation.
People maybe have blown out of proportion the black-white situation, but it was a very significant ball game.
I realized it, to be honest with you, because I came up in an environment where we were thought of as less than.
You asked me if it was a racial issue. As far as I was concerned, I would say no. But they made it that way.
Because it demonstrated on the basketball floor, in the arena, exactly what civil rights activists and leaders and those concerned about American democracy were interested in. Those individuals were proselytizing and preaching for reform and change. And that game sort of illustrated the messages that came from such powerful men and women. To see it dramatized in the arena in a basketball game, I think was one way of helping the society advance and move forward to really come to grips with American democracy.
There wasn't a black player in the Southwest Conference, Southeastern Conference.
Hard to believe for many modern students that there ever was a time when every player in the Southeastern Conference was white.
And I was thinking about winning and not who was black and who was white.
We did start our 5 best athletes, and
no team had ever started 5 blacks in the final game.
There was an attempt to undermine the nature of that victory by suggesting that the athletes were exploited, that Texas Western College may not have been playing by the rules.
He got him to the point where he'd said, I just assumed have lost that game and I wouldn't have to go through this.
I remember Coach saying that at the time, In fact, when we did a story about it, he said, it would have been better if we came in second.
Much of what was said was merely a reflection of either the bias or the bigotry of the period.
I think that what he was reacting to at the moment was all the hate mail he was getting.
Big bags full, of just, and his hate.
Coach did a very good job in hiding it from us. I really didn't find out how many hate letters we received until we came back to get our ring.
I knew everything that was happening here and had a real handle on the misery that he was going through and what responsibility he shared for what we all did in a way.
You're exploiting this, you blah, 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 blah.
I think it came out of venom, it came out of hatred. Indeed, it came out of segregationist attitudes.
And the N-word was in there so many times that it's unbelievable.
Those who frankly did not wish to see American sports changed in such a way.
You know, I'd tell Don, why are you reading it?
These ugly letters that were coming to him and phone calls, and this negative articles in Sports Illustrated.
You know, other coaches would take that Sports Illustrated article and put it in their pocket and take it to recruits. And they would say, well, look, you don't want to go to UTEP. Look at this article. See, you don't want to go there.
And then James Michener's book. He calls it one of the most disgraceful chapters in American sports. He called our players ragamuffins, street toughs.
You have to realize too, the people in Parliament had to sell magazines, they had to sell paper, and no one really wanted to read a lot of good stuff. It just doesn't sell paper.
And I think what it took was a little time and processing for people to begin to understand the significance of that game.
When you look back on it, you understand what Coach Haskins went through. Coach Haskins and Coach Ivor put their careers on the line, because if we hadn't won, they probably wouldn't be coaching anymore.
Essentially, we saw a noble coach, very courageous ball players, and individuals who later went on to make something of themselves.
So if any sporting event on the college level represents a turning point, it would be this 1966 NCAA basketball championship game between Texas Western and the University of Kentucky.
Because the implications were momentous. It now meant that one could not abide by segregationist values or segregationist attitudes. One had to think more fundamentally about integration and integrating people of color into American universities at the athletic level. It was a valuable moment in American history.
The wheels that began to turn. Nothing was settled. Nothing was settled, but we, I think, opened opportunity for a lot of new kids to go to college. Not to play basketball, but to go to college.
Unfortunately, I don't think that enough understand what we did.
What he did on that night in Maryland opened up the doors for all these other black student athletes that otherwise would have never got an education, a good education at a good institution.
I'm going to take a step further and open a lot of doors for a lot of black coaches.
Texas Western is from a southern state, so this shows that even within parts of the South, some schools are recruiting African Americans. It doesn't mean that every southern school goes out and immediately starts recruiting African Americans.
Bob McAdoo, he was one of the leading scorers in the NBA. He said, hey Bobby, man, I don't think y'all, because North Carolina, the next year, North Carolina, SEC, they all started using black players. Before, they wouldn't even use them.
In fact, it's not until the 1972-73 school year that the last three teams in the Southeastern Conference finally have integrated football and basketball teams.
It's been wonderful. It's been fantastic to be part of history and be part of the change and be part of the reverberation, especially at that time in America.
Yeah, I'm part of history. I'm not George Washington, but I'm part of history, you know?
You look at the span of the 10 years, 5 before that and 5 after that, through the Mexico Olympics. It's amazing the things that happened in this country.
About 3 years after that time, I'm sitting looking at the evening paper, the Herald Post, at that time, and I saw the all-conference team in the Southwest Conference, and I saw 5 black guys. And that made me very happy.
It took several years before coaches grudgingly began to accept this. However, the trend was very clear from that game.
We now have a black coach in Kentucky.
But let me say this about, I've got a lot of credit for that. The guy that deserves all the credit was 1957. There was a black kid here by the name of Charlie Brown. Have you heard of him?
We had a black athlete here, one Charlie Brown, who was playing varsity for us in the 50s.
Charlie Brown was a great student and a great player.
And who was named All-Border Conference in the 50s.
We'll just say, had he been a bad guy, had he been a bad student, had he offended the faculty at Texas Western, it probably wouldn't have been that easy. So, got to give George and Charlie all the credit.
And so, it's a story of Texas Western College and its grandeur, and it's also a story of El Paso moving towards reform and change. El Paso was able to arrive at that moment by supporting the team and supporting the university.
I'll always be grateful for the fans of El Paso who accepted us, who took us in, and every game that we played at Memorial Gym, they were there. They were the ones who motivated us. They were the ones who got our energies up, because we could hear them out there when we were in our locker room. We could see them when we walked out onto the floor. I mean, it was just, the energy was there. There was no way anybody was going to beat us.
A lot of good things did happen to me in life because of the game and the season that we had and the relationship that I had here in El Paso.
I'm tickled to be here. I'm blown away by the community and how graciously they invite us back.
These are the guys that were used and tossed away. If so, they don't know it, because they come back all the time. They love the community loves them.
A small town perched on the border could have such a momentous impact on the nation.
The story takes time to become what it really is. Now here they are, men towards the end of their careers, and you can see what kinds of people they've become.
One of the things that makes me the happiest is I can go right down the line, and each and every one has done well. And I've always said that like this group in here, if you got people that compete and they work hard and they're dedicated, they're probably going to be all right.
How much fun it is to see everyone and see we're still standing, and share the old stories and share the new stories of family and friends. The extended family now, after this many years, is always fascinating to hear. Everybody has grandkids, and they're all doing something. We're all active still. Some of us are beginning to retire, and those conversations are interesting because it's a kind of a staggered retirement discussion, and everybody's talking about, well, how is it, and are you going to stay at it, and what do you do all day, and it's just great. It's truly like having 10 brothers.